If you are over 60 years old and sometimes look at your own life and feel a strangeness that is hard to name, as if you recognize everything around you but no longer recognize yourself, this prayer is for you. It is not madness. It is not ingratitude. It is a grief that the world rarely calls by the right name. There was a version of you that existed, a version that woke up in the morning knowing exactly who they were, what they did, where they belonged. Maybe it was the father or mother everyone needed. Maybe it was the professional who knew the subject, who was called when there was a problem to solve. Maybe it was the person full of energy who organized family gatherings, who drove for hours to see the children, who didn't need any help to do what needed to be done. That version is gone. Not all at once. Gradually. So slowly that you almost didn't notice when it happened. A role that was being handed forward without ceremony. A function that stopped being yours. A day when you realized that important decisions no longer go through you, not because of anyone's ill will, but because life went on, and it took along with it a part of what defined who you were. And now there are nights like this. Nights when you look at your hands, those hands that worked so hard, that cared for so many people, that built things that are still standing, and you feel a strange distance between those hands and the person you are now. As if the story they tell belongs to someone you knew very well, but who is no longer here in the same way. This hurts in a particular way, because there is no grave to visit, no date to mark on the calendar, no ritual that the world recognizes for this kind of loss. The people around you often don't even know you are grieving, and you yourself might hesitate to call it that, because it seems pretentious, seems like weakness, seems like you should just be grateful for what you have. But it is grief. It is real, and it deserves to be treated as such. For a few minutes, you don't need to pretend that strangeness doesn't exist. You don't need to smile at it. You don't need to fix it. Stay with me tonight, because in a little while I want to pray with you, not with distant and generic words, but the way someone prays when they sit beside you and understand what you are carrying. And I want you to finish this video feeling something that maybe you haven't felt in a while. That who you are now, exactly now, is a being seen, known, and deeply loved. I want to bring you a text from the book of Psalms. It is Psalm 139, and I want to read especially verses 13 through 16. For you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. Let that settle for a moment. Before I talk about what this text means for the night you are living right now, I want you to notice something about how it was written. The author is not describing a God who created you and then went away, like a watchmaker who assembles the mechanism, winds it, and leaves. He is describing a God who wove, who interwove, who worked thread by thread, detail by detail, with the attention and care of someone making something that matters immensely. You were woven, not mass-produced, not generated generically. Woven, with intention, with specificity, with each characteristic of yours being part of a design that only exists in you. And now comes the part that I need you to hear carefully, because this is where this text speaks directly to the grief you are carrying tonight. The psalm doesn't say that God knew you and loved you when you were at your peak. It doesn't say he saw you when you were stronger, more active, more useful to others. It says that God knew you before anything, before the first role you took on in life, before the first responsibility, the first achievement, the first function that gave you identity, before you were a father or mother, professional, provider, caregiver, family leader. Before all of that, there was you. And God saw you. This matters enormously for someone who feels they have lost a version of themselves, because the logic of the world says you are worth what you do, the role you occupy, the usefulness you have to others. And when these roles are taken away, by retirement, by age, by children who grow up and don't need you in the same way anymore, by the body that starts placing limits where there were none before, the logic of the world says, quietly but cruelly, that you have been losing value along with it. God says the opposite. He says he knew you before any role, And he knows you after all of them too. It's as if he is saying to your heart tonight, I never confused you with what you did. I always knew who you were underneath all of that. And that person, the one who existed before the titles and continues to exist after them, that is the person I wove. That is the person I see now. There is a phrase in verse 16 that stops me every time I read it. All my days were written in your book before any of them existed. All the days, not just the days of productivity, not just the days when you were strong, useful, necessary. All the days, including this one. Including the slower days, the days when the body doesn't cooperate, the days when no one calls, the days when you look in the mirror and take a second longer to recognize the person looking back. These days were also written with the same attention, the same care, the same presence of a God who doesn't lose the thread of your story when the chapters get quieter. You know what touches me deeply about Psalm 139 as a whole? It was written by someone who was feeling completely exposed. The author knows that God knows him through and through, knows the thoughts before they are thought, knows the paths before they are walked. And instead of that being terrifying, at some point in the psalm it becomes comfort. Because being completely known by someone who completely loves you is the opposite of invisibility. It is the opposite of being irrelevant. It is the opposite of being a discarded version of yourself. It is being seen, for real, all the way to the bottom. And there is something more in this text that speaks specifically to the emotional loneliness, that pain of feeling that the people around you no longer see you the way they used to, that you have become a little invisible to the world while everyone's lives have moved on. The world may not be seeing, but God is, not in a distant and formal way, like someone checking attendance on a list, in an intimate, attentive, personal way. The same God who wove you thread by thread is still looking at every thread. He still knows the number of each one. He still cares about every detail of who you are, not of who you were, not of who you could have been, but of who you are now, tonight, in this room, with that strangeness in your chest that is hard even to name. This text was written many years ago by someone who also wondered about their own value, about their own visibility before an immense God. And it is amazing how these words fall so precisely on the night you are living now. Because the God who wove that author with care is the same God who wove you, who knows you by the deepest name, not the name the world gave you for the roles you occupied, but the name that exists before all of this, and that doesn't change when the roles go away. You are not a worn-out version of who you were. You are someone who is in a different chapter of a story that God is still writing. And he knows this chapter, as well as he knew all the others. Maybe better, because now with less noise, less role to play, less function to fulfill, there is something of you that can emerge more clearly. The person who existed before all the titles, the person God saw first, that person is still here, and God is still seeing them. Let me enter into this pain more concretely with you. There is a moment that I imagine you know. It is not a dramatic moment. It is a small, almost banal moment that somehow hurts more than it should. Maybe it is when someone in the family needs to make an important decision and simply doesn't think to consult you, not out of malice. Just because life has been reorganizing who are the people who are called when there is something to solve, and at some point in that reorganization, you were being taken off the list without anyone holding a meeting to decide it. Or maybe it is that family gathering where everyone is excited, talking, planning, and you are sitting there, physically present, but feeling a strange distance, as if you are watching a movie of a life that was once much more yours than it is now. You smile. You participate when asked, but inside there is a question that doesn't leave. Who am I in this story now? Or maybe it is something even simpler. You pass in front of a mirror, not to look at yourself, just in passing, and for a second the image surprises you, not in a frightening way, just unexpected. As if the person reflected there holds a huge story that the world around no longer asks about anymore. A story of decades of work, of sacrifice, of difficult choices, of love given without receipt, of things built that are still standing even if no one anymore associates your name with them. And then you move on. because that's what you do. But at night, especially at night, that strangeness returns, with more space to settle in, because there is no longer enough distraction to keep it outside. This grief you carry has layers, and I want to sit with each of them for a moment, because each one deserves to be recognized. There is the layer of the lost role. For decades, you were needed in a very specific way. There were things only you knew how to do, decisions that went through you, people who depended on your presence, your opinion, your care. This was not just function, it was identity. It was the practical answer to the question, who am I? You were what you did, what you cared for, what you solved. And when these roles were being transferred to the children who grew up, to the younger colleagues, to time that simply passed, it was as if part of the answer went away too. And the world doesn't hold a funeral for this. There are no flowers, no hugs, no sorry for your loss, because from the outside it looks like everything is fine. It looks like this is how it should be. Children grow up, retirement comes, life goes on. And it is. But going on doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. There is the layer of the changed body. This body that you have inhabited for over 6 decades, and that was for so long a reliable tool, that woke up, that worked, that carried, that didn't need so much attention, now has a voice of its own. It says no when it used to say yes. It asks for rest when it barely needed to stop before. There are appointments, there are tests, there are limitations that came without asking permission, and that have slowly redrawn what is possible and what is no longer. And this too is a way of losing a version of yourself. The you that didn't think twice before taking a long trip, that carried the suitcases without help, that stayed up late without cost, that recovered quickly from anything, that you was being left behind. And no one properly explains how to grieve for it, because it seems like the expected answer is acceptance, gratitude, resilience, and you accept. You are grateful, you are resilient, but you also miss it. And there is a third layer, perhaps the quietest of all, the feeling that your inner story, everything you lived, learned, overcame, built internally over decades, no longer has much space to be told. The younger people around are busy with their own stories, which makes all the sense in the world. The conversations are quick, the encounters are brief, the messages are practical, and you carry within yourself an immense archive of experience, of wisdom, of memory, of faith built in the fire, that almost no one asks about anymore. This is emotional loneliness in its purest form. Not the loneliness of having no one nearby, the loneliness of being nearby and still feeling that the deepest part of who you is not being seen. Does anyone really care about who I am now? Not with what I was, not with what I still can do, but with who I am. That thought appears, and it is honest, and it is valid. But I need to sit with you in front of a lie that usually comes along with it, because that lie is treacherous and needs to be called by its name. The lie says, that version of you was the version that was worth something. The rest is just what remains. It says that your worth was in the roles, that your importance was in the usefulness, that without the function, without the strength of before, without the role that defined who you were for others, what remains is a diminished version, a faded outline of something that was once more vibrant. That is a lie. It is one of the cruelest lies that time whispers, and it is completely radically false. Psalm 139 that we read does not say God wove you for a role. It says God wove you, person, soul, being specific, unique, irreplaceable. And what was woven with this care does not lose value when the role changes. It does not wear out when the title goes away. It does not become less precious when the body asks for more rest than before. You are not a role. You never were. And here is something I want you to let in truly tonight. Sometimes it is precisely when the roles go away that the real person appears more clearly. When you are no longer defined by what you do, when function no longer answers for identity, when the silence of night takes away all the external layers, what remains is you. The you God saw first. The you that existed before any title and that continues to exist after all of them. That you has weight, has story, has a presence in the world that is not measured by productivity. Think about the prayers you have made throughout your life, for children, for grandchildren, for people who may never know that someone prayed for them. These prayers have an address in heaven. They did not expire when you retired. They did not lose strength when the body got slower. Every prayer you made is still alive before God, and you can still make them tonight, in this quiet room, with hands that may be more tired, but that still reach the same God as always. That is purpose. Real, concrete, without needing a title. And there is one more thing that only someone who has reached where you have reached can do. You can be, for the people around you, an anchor of faith. Not by what you say. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. But by the way you go through this phase with honesty, with confidence, with the willingness to sit with the difficult questions without pretending they don't exist. This teaches something that no young person can teach yet. Your presence in this chapter of life, exactly this one with all its limitations and silences and strangeness, has a value that the world does not know how to calculate, but that God knows precisely. You did not remain. You continue. And in a little while I want to pray with you exactly about this grief that no one names, about this version of yourself that you miss, about the God who knew you before all the roles and who sees you with the same attention now that they are gone. I want to pray as if I were sitting there beside your bed, holding this night together with you. Lord, I come before you tonight with a heart that carries a grief that the world has no name to call. It is not the grief of someone who lost someone to death, although that is also real and heavy. It is the grief of someone who lost a version of themselves, who wakes up in the morning and feels in the quiet depths of the chest that something left without goodbye, without ceremony, without anyone around knowing there was something to be mourned. And I bring this grief to you now, without embellishment, without trying to make it seem smaller than it is. There is a person here. She is in this room now, maybe with the lamp on in the corner, maybe with the whole house quiet around, maybe with hands resting in her lap, thinking about things that the day didn't give space to think about. And tonight, she is carrying a question that is hard even to formulate out loud. Who am I now, after all that I was? Lord, you know what is behind that question. You know the roles this person held for decades with dedication and love. You saw the work she gave, the sacrifices she made without telling anyone, the nights she stayed awake caring for someone, the difficult decisions she made to protect those she loved, the things she built that are still standing, even if the world no longer associates her name with them. You saw all of it, every detail, every effort, every time she gave of herself when she was at her limit and said nothing, and you also see tonight. This person who is here, a little quieter, a little slower, in a chapter of life that the world around doesn't know very well how to treat. You see the strangeness of looking in the mirror and taking a second longer. You see the family gathering where she was present but felt distant. You see the moment when the important decision was made without anyone thinking to ask her opinion, not out of malice, but because the roles have been redistributing and no one made a ceremony of it, you see. And you do not look at this scene with indifference. If you can, take a deep breath now, let the air come in slowly, and say very quietly, just for him to hear, Lord, I am here, with all that I was and with all that I am now, and I need you to see me tonight. Father, I want to pray first about this specific grief, the grief for the version that went away. There is real pain in having been for so long the person others needed, and feeling that this role was being handed forward without ceremony. There is real pain in having a body that no longer responds like before, that places limits where there were none, that made certain things impossible that once were simple. There is real pain in carrying decades of experience, of wisdom, of lived history, and feeling there is little space for that history to be heard. These pains are real, Lord. I do not ask you to treat them as small, I ask you to treat them as God does, that you enter into them tonight with the tenderness of the one who wove every thread of this life, that you comfort this grief with the authority of the one who knows this person more deeply than any role ever managed to define, that you speak to her heart now, not with quick and distant answers, but with the close presence of the one who never confused this person with the function she performed. Lord, speak against the lie that emotional loneliness whispers tonight. The lie that says the value was in the roles, that the importance was in the usefulness, that without the strength of before, without the title of before, without the role of before, what remains is a smaller version, faded, of what once was more vibrant. That lie is not your voice. It never was. Your voice says, I wove you. I knew you before any role, and I know you after all of them. May that voice be louder tonight than any other. Louder than the silence of the house. Louder than the strangeness of the mirror. Louder than the question that keeps circling in the dark. Who am I now? Say with me now very quietly, I am someone who was woven by God, before my roles, after my roles, and now, exactly now, I am seen by Him. Lord, I want to pray about the invisibility, that particular feeling of being present and still not being truly seen, of participating in conversations and feeling that the deepest part of who one is not being reached, of having a huge story inside, decades of faith built in the fire, of lessons learned in the hard place, of love given without receipt, and feeling there are few moments when someone stops to ask about this. You do not have this problem, Lord. You do not look at this person and see only the surface. You do not see age first, slowness first, limitation first. You see what is underneath all of that, the soul you formed, the story you accompanied, the faith that was being built through each season of this life, including this one. May this person feel that tonight. Not as a nice idea, as a reality that lands on the chest with weight and warmth, the weight of being truly known, the warmth of being truly seen. Place your hand on your chest now, gently. Feel your heart beating, and remember, that heart is known by God thread by thread. Each beat of it happens before a God who is looking, not from afar, not formally, but with the attention of one who wove this heart before it existed and who still cares about every detail of what it carries. You are not invisible to God. You never were. Lord, I also want to pray about the body, this body that gave so much and now asks for more care, that has appointments and tests and limitations that came without asking permission. That sometimes hurts in the morning before anything, that tires faster, that is no longer the silent and reliable tool it once was. May this person not carry shame for her own body tonight. May she not feel betrayed by it, because this body carries the mark of a life truly lived. Every mark, every limitation, every sign of time is the evidence of someone who was here, who worked, who cared, who loved with the whole body. Lord, care for this body tonight. May it truly rest. May the pain in it find relief. May the sleep that comes be restorative, not just for the muscles and bones, but for the spirit that inhabits this body, and that is also tired of carrying questions without answers. And about the future, about that day that we all know is coming. May there be no terror tonight. May there be peace, the peace of knowing that the same God who knew you before all the roles will be present when all the chapters here end. That the transition that one day will happen is not to be faced as the end of someone who no longer had usefulness, but as the definitive meeting of someone with the God who has known them all along and who was waiting to say, face to face, without an intermediary, I saw you all the time, every chapter, and you always mattered to me. Say with me now, when my last day here comes, may it be in your arms, with peace in my heart. Until then, I choose to rest in the truth that you know me, not by what I did, but by who I am. Lord, speak now about purpose, because this person needs to hear this in this clear way. She still has one. Not the purpose of before, not that which depended on the role, the function, the usefulness measured in visible results. A quieter purpose, deeper, more resistant to time. The purpose of one who prays, who carries the family in her heart before you every morning, who simply by having reached this far with faith still burning, has something to offer that no young person can offer yet. May this person feel tonight that her prayers have an address, that every name she speaks before you is heard, that every surrender she makes, every child placed in your hands, every grandchild asked with love, every situation she cannot control but that she chooses to entrust to you, has real weight in the spiritual world. She did not remain. She continues. With purpose, with value, with the full attention of a God who did not confuse her with the roles she performed, and who did not abandon her when those roles went away. Envelop this room with your peace now, Lord. May every thought that tries to convince this person that she is less than she was slow down in your hands, one by one. May the strangeness that sometimes appears when she looks in the mirror be replaced gradually by something more true, the recognition of someone who is looking at a life lived with courage and who still has more chapters ahead. Say one last time, very quietly before closing your eyes, I choose to rest tonight. I choose to trust that I am seen, not by what I did, but by who I am. I receive your presence here, now, in this room, and I rest. May the last thought of this night not be the question about who you are now. May it be the answer that God already gave before you could ask, you are mine, I know you, and you can rest. In Jesus' name, amen. If this prayer touched something inside you tonight, keep this video, save it on YouTube, because there will be other nights when that strangeness will return. Nights when the question, who am I now, will appear again, quiet and persistent. And when that happens, you won't need to look for it. This prayer will be here, waiting for you, ready to sit with you again. And if you feel that our encounters are bringing you tranquility, consider subscribing to the channel. That simple gesture supports us to continue our journey. And there is one more thing I want to ask you. While you were listening tonight, maybe a face came to your mind. Maybe someone you know who also carries this silent grief. Someone who recently retired and hasn't found the new ground yet. Someone who was widowed and lost along with their spouse an entire part of who they were. Someone in a nursing home who rarely receives visits and who probably no longer knows for sure who they are to the world out there. If a face came, don't ignore it. Send this video to that person. You don't need a long explanation. You don't need an elaborate message. Just a, I was thinking of you is enough. Sometimes the greatest act of love is simply remembering that someone exists and letting that person know it. In the next video, I want to continue praying with you. And the next step is natural, almost inevitable. Because after recognizing this grief for who you were, after letting God see you in this honest and quiet place, what usually appears is another layer of this same pain. The feeling that the people around you no longer see you, of being invisible, of speaking and feeling that no one really heard, of being in a room full of people and still feeling that you are not the first person remembered by anyone. That is one of the most silent and most painful forms of loneliness that exists. And it deserves to be brought before God with the same honesty that we brought tonight. Now rest, close your eyes, remember, you are not a worn-out version of who you were. You are someone that God is still writing. And tonight, exactly this one, is part of that story. He is here and you can rest. And